something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. Now, which view is more reasonable? No one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing? For me, I don't think nothing can come from nothing. I mean, even Julie Andrews knew that. She said nothing comes from nothing, right? You've got to have a cause to get something. Now, you can ask who made the someone, and if you want to ask who made God, we can do that during the Q&A. But it seems like someone created something out of nothing. Now, by the way, this is not a God of the gaps argument. Why? Because natural law couldn't have created the universe, because natural law was created at the Big Bang. There was no nature. There was no natural law. In effect, it must be a supernatural cause, because all of the natural realm hadn't yet been created. And supernatural simply means beyond the natural. This led Robert Jastrow, again the agnostic astronomer, to say this, that there are what I or anyone would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact. Echoing something that Arthur Eddington said many years ago when he said, we run into insuperable difficulties unless, frankly, we look at the supernatural for the beginning of the universe. In fact, Jastrow ended his entire book this way. This is worth the price of the book. After going through much of the surge evidence I just mentioned, Jastrow said this, for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he's greeted by a band of theologians who've been sitting there for centuries. No doubt reading Genesis 1:1. The best explanation for the beginning of the universe is in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the C. A lot more in the book on it. We've got to move on to the O. And the O in cosmos stands for order. This is sometimes called the teleological argument for design. Not only did the universe explode into being out of nothing, it did so with extreme precision. In other words, the Big Bang was not a chaotic explosion. How incredibly precise was it? Atheist Steven Weinberg put it this way. He said, life as we know it would be impossible if any one of several physical quantities had slightly different values. There are dozens of these quantities. One of them, as Stephen Hawking identified, was this. He said that if the universe, or if the expansion rate of the universe changed by 1 part in 100,000 million a second after the Big Bang, we wouldn't be here. The universe would not have expanded, or it would have collapsed back on itself, or it never would have created galaxies. That's how precisely designed the Big Bang event was. Not only was the Big Bang event precisely designed, so are many constants about our universe right now. If you change the gravitational force by 1 part in 10 to the 40, we wouldn't be here. What's 1 part in 10 to the 40? Illustration. Take a tape measure, stretch it from that back wall to the front wall in inches. If you set gravity at a particular inch mark on that tape measure and move the strength of gravity 1 inch in either direction proportionally, we go out of existence. But the problem is the tape measure doesn't go from that wall to this front wall. It goes across the entire known universe. You change gravity that much in the entire known universe, we don't exist. For you Navy people out here, I was in the Navy for many years. Think of an aircraft carrier. If you take an aircraft carrier like the John Stennis or the Ronald Reagan, which displaces 110,000 tons, has a runway on it that's about 3 lengths of a football field, has 5,000 to 6,000 people on it, several stories high. If you were to change the weight of that aircraft carrier by less than 1/1,000,000th the weight of an electron, it would be uninhabitable if the aircraft carrier was the universe. That's how incredibly designed the universe is. Arno Penzias again said, astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. Frank Tipler in 1986 wrote a book called The Anthropic Cosmological Principle with John Barrow. It's the classic work on the fact that the universe is precisely tweaked to support life. Here's what Tipler has since said. When I began my career as a cosmologist some 20 years ago, I was a convinced atheist. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that one day I would be writing a book purporting to show that the central claims of the Judeo-Christian theology are in fact true, that these claims are straightforward deductions from the laws of physics as we now understand them. I have been forced into these conclusions by the inexorable logic of my own special branch of physics. Now, some people, we may even get into Darwinism later. Like Darwinism saves atheism. Darwinism does not save atheism at all because you need a universe before you can ever get to life. And it shows here, and then you need life. The universe needs a designer. The universe itself, not just life. So that's the O. Let's move on to the S, which is another branch of the of the teleological argument. The S stands for specified complexity. In everyday English, specified complexity is information. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're walking along the beach, say down here in Belmar, where I was today. Had a nice run on the beach today on a boardwalk in Belmar. Let's say you're walking along the beach in the summer, and you look down as you're walking along the beach, and you see in the beach someone has scrawled, "Bennies, go home." Now, some of you don't know what bennies are, but bennies are basically tourists. Are you going to say that the waves came up and put that message in there? Or that the crabs came up and said, "I'm tired of all these tourists stepping on me. I'm going to put a message there for them to go home"? No, you'd say somebody, some intelligent being put that in there. Or then you put your head back on the pillow or back on your towel and you look up and you see in the clouds, "Drink Coke." What do you assume? Unusual cloud formation? Do you go, "Wind coming from the north today"? Do you go, "Oh no, I got it. It's cloud evolution"? No, you say there had to be a skywriter up there. Why? Because messages only come from minds. We know of no natural law that can create a message. Messages only come from minds. Now, let's move into life. A simple, so-called simple, one-celled creature has 1,000 complete sets of Encyclopedia Britannica worth of information in it. 1,000, let's say 1,000 volumes of Encyclopedia Britannica in it in terms of its DNA. DNA. That much information in it. Now, to believe that that resulted by natural forces without intelligent intervention is like believing that the Library of Congress resulted from an explosion in a printing shop. I don't have enough faith to believe that. You have to have more faith to believe that that happened that way than to say that somebody put intelligence into it. In fact, this is not an analogy, by the way. The analogy or the comparison of information to DNA, in fact, it's a one-to-one correspondence. The only difference is DNA has a 4-letter genetic alphabet. English has a 26-letter genetic alphabet. Bill Gates said DNA is like a software program, only much more complex than anything we've ever devised. And in fact, the sequence of letters in DNA is not determined by chemistry. It's information. It has nothing to do with the 4 natural forces. In fact, just like the letters in this book were not put together by the laws of ink and paper, the letters in DNA don't appear to be the result of anything other than intelligence. Intelligence put this together, not natural law. Anthony Flew, who was an atheist, one of the more famous atheists until he became a deist or a theist recently because of this evidence, put it this way. It is impossible for evolution to account for the fact that one single cell can carry more data than all the volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica put together. It now seems to me that the findings of more than 50 years of DNA research have provided the materials for a new and enormously powerful argument to design. Sir Fred Hoyle, also an atheist, said this: "The likelihood of the spontaneous formation of life from inanimate matter is 1 in a number that has 40,000 zeros following it. If the beginnings of life were not random, they must therefore have been the product of purposeful intelligence." He went on to say this: "A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature." Again, this is not a God of the gaps